Okay, I'm going to be critiquing me lunging Winslow at the canter. So you've seen his previous attempt at lunging on the on the line in the canter, and it wasn't great. He was very imbalanced. It was very rushy. I think he only could maintain it for a couple of strides. So we've been working on it off camera at this point, but I just kind of critique just my use of pressure and just kind of the whole process here. But it is going to look better than before, but I'm just kind of not loving the process of kind of doing a whole bunch of wrong things like this. There's no need for him to trot off immediately like that. There's no need for me to just smack him with the stick. So, I mean, that's just completely unnecessary. So, there's really no cues there. I need to be pointing and then waiting and then lifting my stick. And I've said this a million times, but I just want to point that out again. And he does look off again on this little trot circle. So, and then at the time, like I clearly just didn't notice it. So I'm not really sure what that is. Again, I'm probably going with footing at this point. I really don't know. He had his feet trimmed, he did all that stuff, so I'm not really sure, but I just want to say that I didn't notice it at this point in time, when this video was filmed, but I do notice it now. So probably shouldn't even be doing much work on the lunge or at the trot or the canter because he does seem a bit off. Um, this cantering looks a lot better. I'm not really sure why I need to get him to change directions so much because he seemed like he was getting in the canter and that looked a lot nicer than last time. So yeah, I'm not sure about that one. But you saw me like better going into it, but again, he's got that outside lead and you can see him looking to the outside. He's looking to get away, so that's why they pick up that outside lead a lot, is because they're thinking outside. Their shoulders leaning outside, their weight's going to the outside. So that was better. He actually had a stride of correct lead canter there. And then he's back to cross cantering. And there we go. Now he switches, kind of. Um, he switches and then he kind of crossfires and he's kind of all over the place. But this is a good example of what I want to talk about. So again, here he's kind of crossfiring. Um, so he's getting into it better, but it's very messy, as you can see. We're all over the place. We're not doing anything correctly. Like we're practicing a lot of things we don't want. We don't want a rushy canter. We don't want to pull him down to a stop. We don't want him crossfiring and on the wrong lead and pulling away and all this stuff. And so yeah, to get to what I was wanting, which is just correct lead canter, we had to do all this other stuff. And now like really it's not necessary because I could get my horse to canter on the correct lead balanced with a target. So it's just the whole process we don't need to practice things that we don't need. And it's definitely not good for them mentally or physically. And then when I'm desensitizing him here, you can see how tight and tense his neck was when I ran up to him. And his neck is still really tight. It's really high. It's still tense. You can see the underside of his neck muscles. So just like I was talking about with all the other desensitizing, like he's not desensitized in any way. He knows when I bring out the stick or if I do any weird movement, he's supposed to just stand there and wait until it stops. So, and those horses can be dangerous because you think they're quiet and they really aren't. So he finally can relax down here because I'm not, swinging the rope at him, swinging the whip, stuff like that, running at him. There he goes off really nicely, but you can tell him he's like swishing his tail and he's like wasn't super like it wasn't relaxed. He was doing it because he knew like if he didn't do it, I'm gonna hit him with a stick. So that's not what I want with my horse. I want to have a relationship and we're communicating both ways. It's not just a dictatorship and I'm just telling him what to do all the time. So he's again getting into that canter when I ask, but he's getting on the wrong lead there. He had the right lead or the correct lead, but he's switching his tail. You can see his shoulder pushing out, high head and neck. And then I think what I was doing is every time he was like wrong lead, I would stop him and have him go the other direction. So cross firing, so I would stop him. Yeah, I'm not really sure what that's gonna do. Like again, look at that underside of his neck. He's not relaxed in any way. Huge bulging underside of his neck muscle. Really, now he's just continuing to lift it. Like there, he's lifting it, and kind of put it down a little bit, and then he lifts it back up. So there, he finally kind of relaxes his neck down. But goodness, like he's very tight and tense and stressed this whole process. And again, really tight neck. just any little movement that I do, he thinks that I'm going to go in there and run at him or swing the rope at him or the whip or whatever. And so he definitely doesn't trust me. Now he's just preparing to just take whatever is going to come at him, which is not what we want. So, I think what I was trying to do was as soon as he was like crossfiring or on the wrong lead or whatever, I would like have him stop and go the other way. But I'm really not telling him what the correct thing is, what I want him to do. I'm telling him what not to do. So, and he's just not balanced enough to give me that correct lead at this point in time. And there's a lot of like pulling, like, because he's pushing out, he wants to get away from the pressure because there's so much pressure that I'm putting on him. He probably needs like a big round pen or a longer line so that he can actually go for it. So he just like, him just, tail swishing, head up, just legs all over the place, cross firing. He probably isn't strong enough to really do a lot of cantering. We should probably stick to a lot of walk and trot work first, and then give him that bigger space to be able to move and pick up that correct lead. Um, and then try to do this just like on the lunge. But if you go and watch like Caster's videos, you can see him pick up the canter and none of this is happening. He doesn't crossfire. He just goes forward toward the target and there's none of this. There's no pulling, there's no sending, there's no tail swishing. There's, moments of confusion, but it's not, him tensing his neck and swishing his tail and running and pulling, and there's none of that. So I think motivating the horse properly is the big change between the two processes. So, and we could have done this a lot better and a lot cleaner using negative reinforcement, but I used way, way, way too much pressure. So, and you can tell, like, I continue to go over there and try to desensitize him, and it's not working because then I go back and immediately chase him with the rope or with the whip. And so, of course, he's going to never trust it because sometimes it bites him, sometimes it doesn't. He doesn't know what to do. So, that's why you have to continually desensitize so that your horse isn't constantly in fear of the whip, and he still might be. So, that's kind of a never-ending cycle of doing that versus like letting him like proper desensitizing, because this isn't actual desensitizing, this is just flooding. It's just referred to as desensitizing a lot. But proper desensitizing would be very small steps at really low levels and then progressively getting to a higher and higher intensity. And that is not what's happening at all. I'm running up to him at full intensity. I'm just throwing the rope on him. So pretty high intensity, and that's just going to be flooding him. He's just learning to stand there and take it until it's something really scary where he can't do that anymore. He's just too afraid. So I'm sending him back off. That was better application of my cues. He still though goes off and like swishes his tail because he knows if he doesn't do this, then there's going to be more pressure put on him. So it's always a threat. Negative reinforcement is always going to be, okay, well, if you don't do this, then more pressure is going to be put on you in the normal use of it. Like I like to use non-escalating pressure, so there is still pressure behind it, but it's not going to be very super intense. So I can see Winslow's reaction when I point up, like he's like, "Oh, I better get out of here before you hit me with the whip." So he still knows, like, even though you can teach a horse to go off of a light cue and maybe just me picking up my hand softly, he knows what is behind that, what happens if he doesn't respond to that. So it's not just suggestions all the time. It's still negative reinforcement. If you stopped backing that up with more pressure, then he would stop responding to it because you continually have to repeat the process over and over and over again so that they continue to respond to that latest pressure. So, and that's how negative reinforcement works. People get all kind of stuck on that with positive reinforcement. It's like, oh, I have to feed my horse treats forever. Yes, because you have to continue that reinforcement. You're continuing reinforcing behaviors with negative reinforcement all the time. You just don't know it. Every time you apply your leg and take it off, you're adding pressure and taking off. You're doing negative reinforcement. And so it's every single time. And you might do that 100 times while you're riding. And you just don't realize it because it's in the framework of just normal riding. So yeah, we have a lot of things to fix with this video.